The rain fell in sheets that night, drumming against rooftops and echoing down the narrow streets like a steady heartbeat. It was one of those nights where the world seemed to hold its breath, where the cold pressed in, and loneliness whispered between raindrops. On the outskirts of the small town of Fairview, a dim porch light flickered outside a modest wooden house. Inside, a man stood by the window, staring into the darkness beyond the glass. Ethan Ward had gotten used to the quiet. It was the kind of silence that only came after losing too much too soon. The coffee in his hand had gone cold long ago, but he didn't care. His daughter, Lily, was asleep upstairs, her soft breathing the only reminder that love still lived in this house. He'd been a single father for nearly 4 years now, ever since Emily's accident. One phone call had shattered everything he thought was certain. Now, every creak of the floorboard, every sigh of the wind, seemed to echo her absence. Lightning flashed, illuminating the empty road in front of his home. And then, through the shimmer of rain, he saw movement. Someone was out there. A figure stumbled forward, cloaked in darkness. Struggling against the storm, Ethan squinted. The figure wasn't just lost, it was injured. Without thinking, he grabbed his jacket and stepped out into the rain. "Hey, are you okay?" he shouted over the roar of thunder. The figure turned toward him, barely managing to stay upright. It was a woman, her uniform torn, mud streaked across her face. A soldier. She looked exhausted, trembling from cold and pain. "Please, I just need a place to stay until morning," she managed, her voice weak. Ethan didn't hesitate. "Come on," he said, moving closer. "You'll freeze out here." He wrapped his arm around her shoulders, feeling how light she was beneath the soaked fabric. Together they stumbled up the porch steps, and as soon as he got her inside, the warmth of the small house enveloped her like a lifeline. She collapsed into the armchair near the fireplace as Ethan hurried to light it. The flames crackled to life, casting a golden glow across her face. She couldn't have been more than 30. Her eyes a deep, weary brown, her hands trembling as she tried to unlace her boots. "Let me help," Ethan said softly, kneeling beside her. She gave a faint, grateful nod. "Thank you. I didn't mean to trouble you." "You're not," he replied. "You're safe here." For a while, neither of them spoke. The rain pounded on the roof, and the fire filled the silence. Then she whispered, "I was stationed just outside town. My name's Claire." "Claire Monroe." "Ethan Ward," he said, offering a small smile. "This place doesn't see many visitors at this hour. You must have been through hell." The Claire gave a faint laugh that broke halfway into a sob. "You could say that. I just needed to get away. Needed to breathe." Ethan didn't press for details. There was something in her tone, something fragile, that told him not to. Instead, he fetched a towel and one of his late wife's old sweatshirts. Claire hesitated before accepting it, her eyes flicking toward a framed photograph on the wall, a smiling woman with kind eyes and a little girl in her arms. "Your wife?" she asked gently. He followed her gaze. "Yeah," he said after a pause. "Emily. She passed away a few years ago." The Claire lowered her head. "I'm sorry." "It's okay," he murmured. "You learn to keep moving." "For her." He nodded upstairs toward Lily's room. "My daughter, she's 8. Something softened in Claire's expression. "You're doing this alone." "Trying to," he said with a small, tired smile. "She keeps me going." The conversation faded, leaving only the rain and fire between them. But something in the room had changed. It wasn't just two strangers anymore. It was two broken souls who'd found each other in the middle of a storm. As the night deepened, Claire's eyes grew heavy. Ethan brought her a blanket, and before long she drifted off on the couch, the firelight dancing over her face. He watched her for a moment, saw the lines of pain, the faint scar above her brow, the soldier's fatigue that never truly fades. Outside the storm raged on. Inside for the first time in a long while, Ethan felt something stir. A quiet sense of purpose. He went upstairs, checked on Lily, and tried to sleep. But he couldn't. He kept hearing Claire's words. "I just needed to get away." There was something in her voice that didn't sound like running from a storm. It sounded like running from something deeper. Something dangerous. And then, just as the clock struck midnight, came a sound that made his heart freeze. A knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks at the door. He sat up, pulse quickening. No one in Fairview visited at this hour. The wind howled, the rain hissed against the glass. But that knock had been real. Downstairs, Claire stirred. Her hand instinctively went to her side, where a faint bulge hinted at a concealed weapon beneath her jacket. Ethan's breath caught. Whoever she was, whatever she'd brought with her into his home, it wasn't over. The night was far from done revealing its secrets. Ethan froze halfway down the stairs, his pulse pounding so loud it drowned out the rain. The knocks came again. 3 measured thuds that echoed through the house, each one slower than the last. Whoever was out there wasn't seeking shelter. This wasn't the knock of someone desperate or lost. It was the kind that carried weight and purpose. Claire was already awake, her instincts sharpened by years of training. She moved silently, her hands slipping beneath her jacket where Ethan now realized she kept a small sidearm. Her eyes flicked to him, steady, focused, warning him not to make a sound. He nodded slowly, his throat dry. The rain outside intensified, rattling against the window panes. Another flash of lightning cut across the sky, illuminating the figure standing just beyond the frosted glass of the door. A man, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark coat, a hat pulled low over his face. Claire whispered, barely audible, "Get Lily. Take her upstairs and stay quiet." Ethan hesitated. "Who is he?" Her eyes flickered toward the door, then back to him. "Just do it. Please." That last word, "please," wasn't the voice of a soldier giving orders. It was the voice of someone afraid. Ethan's heart tightened. Without another word, he turned and ran up the stairs 2 at a time. He entered Lily's room and found her half awake, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy," she murmured sleepily. "Shh," he whispered, gently lifting her into his arms. "It's okay, sweetheart. Just stay quiet for me." She clung to his neck, sensing something wrong. Ethan carried her into the small storage room beside his bedroom and set her down inside, closing the door just enough to leave a sliver of light. "Don't come out until I say, okay?" Lily nodded, eyes wide. Downstairs, the door creaked open. "Claire Monroe," a man's voice said, deep and deliberate, each syllable cutting through the storm. "You're a hard woman to find." Ethan crept to the top of the stairs, staying hidden in the shadows. "I told you to stay away." Claire's voice came back, low but trembling with anger. "You shouldn't be here." The man stepped inside, dripping rain onto the floorboards. He shut the door behind him, his boots leaving muddy imprints on the rug. "You made it hard not to be. You disappeared after the hearing, Claire. They sent people looking for you." "I wasn't running," she said, though her tone betrayed her. "I just needed time." The man's gaze hardened. "Time won't change what happened. You disobeyed a direct order in the field. 3 men died because of it." Ethan's stomach clenched. He could see them now. 2 silhouettes in the faint light of the fireplace, their shadows stretching long across the walls. "You don't know the whole story," Claire whispered. "Then tell me," the man said, stepping closer. "Tell me why you walked away, left your unit, vanished like none of it mattered." Claire's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. "Because I couldn't watch innocent people die anymore. That mission, it wasn't what they said it was. We weren't rescuing civilians. We were eliminating witnesses." The man's jaw tightened. "That's classified." "I know," she said bitterly. "That's why I had to get out before they silenced me too." Ethan's grip on the railing tightened until his knuckles whitened. The air in the room felt electric, charged with truth and fear and something he couldn't quite name. "Who's in the house?" the man asked suddenly, scanning the shadows. "You're not alone." Before Claire could answer, Ethan stepped forward into view. "I am," he said quietly. The man turned, his eyes narrowing. "And you are?" "Someone who gave her shelter." She was hurt. The man studied him, then looked back at Claire. "He doesn't know who you really are, does he?" "Enough," she snapped. "He's got nothing to do with this. You're not bringing your war into his home." The man sighed, as if tired. "You always did care too much, Claire." And then his tone changed. Softer, almost regretful. "They've already sent others. You can't hide forever. Come with me quietly, and maybe we can fix this before it's too late." "I can't," she said. He nodded once. Disappointment etched across his face. "Then I didn't come alone." Lightning flashed again, and Ethan's breath caught as 2 more figures emerged from the darkness outside, stepping onto the porch. Claire's hand moved fast, drawing her weapon, the metal glinting in the firelight. "Ethan, go." The man raised his palms. "Don't make this worse." But before he could say another word, a crash of thunder shook the windows, and a gunshot shattered the silence. The sound was deafening. Ethan ducked instinctively, his ears ringing, smoke curling in the air. Claire's hand trembled as she held her pistol, her breathing sharp. The man was on the floor, alive, but bleeding from a wound in his shoulder. She backed away, her voice breaking. "You shouldn't have come here." Outside, the two figures began pounding on the door. Ethan grabbed her arm. "This can't happen here!" "My daughter?" "I know," Claire said, her eyes filling with guilt. "I'll get them away from you. I promise." And before Ethan could stop her, she flung open the back door, disappearing into the downpour with the weapon still in her hand. The storm swallowed her whole. Ethan stood there in the flickering light, staring after her. Heart racing, mind spinning. The wounded man on the floor groaned, clutching his arm. "You have no idea what she's done," he rasped. "No idea what you've just gotten yourself into." Ethan turned toward him, the sound of rain like static in his ears. "I don't care what she's done," he said coldly. "No one brings violence into my home again." But even as he said it, a shadow crossed the porch window. Another knock, harder this time, shaking the frame. And Ethan realized the night was far from over. The next few seconds stretched like hours. Ethan stood frozen, his chest heaving, his thoughts spinning in chaotic circles. The rain was relentless now, battering against the windows with furious insistence. Another series of knocks came. Louder this time, followed by the unmistakable crunch of boots on the porch. The wounded man on the floor. Agent or soldier, Ethan couldn't tell. Pressed his hand against his shoulder, blood seeping through his fingers. "You need to let me handle this," he muttered, wincing. "If they find her here, it'll be bad for all of us." Ethan glared at him. "You already brought this to my house. My daughter's upstairs. You tell me how I'm supposed to handle that." The man tried to push himself up, gritting his teeth. "Claire Monroe isn't who you think she is. She didn't just run from the army. She stole classified data before disappearing. Whatever she told you, it's only half the truth." Ethan's jaw tightened. "And what's the other half?" Before he could answer, the door shuttered under a heavy kick. Wood splintered. The porch light flickered once, then went out completely, plunging the room into near darkness save for the fire's dying glow. "Get away from the door," Ethan hissed, moving toward the kitchen. He grabbed the baseball bat leaning by the pantry. A relic from simpler days, when weekends were about father-daughter games, not survival. The man slumped against the wall, pale and trembling. "You can't fight them," he said through clenched teeth. "They're not police. They'll kill you just to get to her." Ethan's pulse thundered in his ears. "Then they'll have to go through me first." The door burst open. Two figures entered. Faces obscured by the shadows, rain dripping from their jackets. One swept a flashlight across the room. The other raised a gun. Ethan ducked behind the counter, his heart hammering. He could hear them talking, low, professional voices. "She's not here. Search the rooms." One pair of boots moved toward the stairs. Ethan felt ice crawl up his spine. Lily, he couldn't let them reach her. Acting on instinct, he swung out from behind the counter, slamming the bat against the wall to draw attention. The sound cracked through the tension like thunder. "Thier!" one of them shouted. As the flashlight beam swung toward him, Ethan charged. The bat connected with a sharp crack against the man's wrist, sending the gun skittering across the floor. The second figure lunged, grabbing Ethan by the collar and slamming him into the counter. Pain exploded through his ribs. He gasped, struggling against the grip. The bat fell from his hands. The man's voice was a low snarl. "Where is she?" Ethan spat blood, defiance burning in his eyes. "Gone. You'll never find her." The man drew back a fist. But before he could strike, a sudden blast of wind tore through the open door, followed by a figure emerging from the darkness. Claire. Soaked to the bone, face streaked with rain and determination, she moved like a shadow, swift, precise. Her gun was steady, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Step away from him." Both intruders froze. One turned slowly, the beam of his flashlight landing on her face. "You should have kept running, Monroe." "I'm done running," she said. The moment hung suspended in silence, broken only by the hiss of rain and the crackle of the dying fire. Then, without warning, everything erupted at once. A gunshot split the air. The flashlight shattered, plunging the room into darkness. Ethan ducked, dragging the wounded agent down with him. Flashes of muzzle fire lit the room in violent bursts. Claire firing once, twice, moving between shadows like a ghost. Then, silence. The rain outside softened, almost as if the storm itself were holding its breath. Ethan raised his head slowly. One of the intruders lay unconscious near the doorway. The other was gone. Disappeared into the night. Claire lowered her weapon, her hands shaking. "Are you hurt?" she asked, rushing to Ethan's side. He shook his head, catching his breath. I'm fine. But Lily. She's safe, Claire said quickly. I saw her hiding upstairs before I came back in. Ethan's shoulders sagged in relief, though his eyes still burned with fury and confusion. What is this, Claire? Who are they? Why are people trying to kill you? She hesitated, torn between truth and silence. But something in his voice, raw, pleading, broke her guard. They were part of my unit, she said finally. We were sent to carry out an operation overseas. What I found there, it wasn't war. It was execution, civilians, families. She swallowed hard, her voice trembling. I tried to stop it, I disobeyed orders. When I exposed the truth, they branded me a traitor. I took proof, files, photos, everything. But I couldn't let them bury it. So I ran. Ethan stared at her, struggling to take it in. And now they're here to erase you. Not just me, she whispered. Anyone who helps me, too. The realization hit him like a wave. He looked toward the stairs, where Lily was hiding, and a fierce protectiveness flared inside him. You need to go, he said quietly. Now. Before they come back. Claire's eyes filled with guilt. Ethan, I can't leave you like this. You and your daughter. He shook his head. You already brought enough danger into this house. I'll handle the rest. She stepped closer, rain dripping from her lashes. You saved my life tonight. Let me protect yours. Their eyes met. Two souls bruised by loss. Tethered by something neither could name. And for a fleeting moment, the chaos faded. Then the sound of distant sirens began to rise in the night. Slow, steady, approaching. Claire's face went pale. They found me. Ethan moved toward the window, watching the faint glow of lights cresting the hill. Ooh. The police. No, she whispered. They'll be wearing badges, but they don't answer to the law. Ethan turned toward her, the bat still in his hand, the storm outside beginning to swell again. Then we run, he said. And as the sirens grew louder, the two of them, one broken soldier and one grieving father, prepared to disappear into the storm together. The rain showed no mercy. It slashed sideways through the night, a wall of water and wind that blurred the line between sky and earth. Ethan and Claire burst out the back door, drenched in seconds, their breath coming fast in the cold air. Behind them, faint red and blue lights flickered through the trees. Approaching, steady, methodical. Ethan led the way toward his truck parked behind the tool shed. Get in! He shouted over the storm, throwing open the driver's door. Claire hesitated. What about Lily? He turned sharply, eyes fierce. She's with my neighbor, Margaret. I called her before we left. She's safe. Claire's shoulders dropped slightly in relief, though guilt still clouded her expression. You shouldn't have to do this. He met her gaze, rain streaking down his face. And you shouldn't have to run alone. Without another word, they climbed into the truck. The engine roared to life, tires splashing through mud, as they sped down the winding back road that cut through the forest. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the narrow path ahead, and thunder rolled like the growl of something ancient and angry. Ethan gripped the wheel tight, eyes locked on the road. Where are we going? Claire's voice was steady, though her hands trembled. There's an old ranger station about 20 miles north. Off-grid. If we can reach it, I can send a signal to someone who still believes me. Someone you trust. She hesitated. Someone I used to. Well, for a while, the only sound was the rumble of the engine and the relentless drumming of rain. The world outside the windshield looked like a watercolor painting being washed away. Trees bending, rivers swelling, the night swallowing everything it touched. Then Ethan broke the silence. Back there, when you saw those men, you didn't even flinch. You knew what they'd do if they caught you. Claire's eyes were distant, staring at the rain streaking down the glass. You stop being afraid after a while. When you've seen enough, lost enough, it's like fear just burns out. He glanced at her. That's not true. You're afraid right now. She looked at him sharply. Off what? Off being alone, he said softly. You didn't run from them tonight. You ran from what comes after. When there's no one left to fight beside you. For a long moment, she didn't answer. Then she said quietly, You sound like someone who knows. Ethan's grip tightened on the wheel. I do. The road curved sharply, forcing him to focus. The headlights caught something glinting ahead. Metal spikes scattered across the road. He slammed the brakes, the truck fishtailing to a halt just before the tires hit the trap. Damn it. He muttered. Claire leaned forward, eyes narrowing. They were waiting for us. Before Ethan could respond, a pair of headlights flared to life from the darkness behind them. Another vehicle. Then another. Claire's voice dropped to a whisper. They boxed us in. Ethan's pulse quickened. What now? Her eyes darted toward the dense line of trees to their right. We'll go on foot. He stared at her. You're serious? Dead serious. They scrambled out of the truck, the wind nearly knocking them off balance. Claire slung a small black duffel over her shoulder. Ethan hadn't even noticed her grab it from the floor. What's in there? He shouted. The proof, she said simply. They plunged into the woods. The rain soaked them to the bone, the mud sucking at their boots with every step. Behind them, voices shouted orders, beams of light slicing through the darkness. Split up. She's here somewhere. Ethan and Claire pressed themselves against a fallen log, breathing hard. Claire's chest heaved, water streaming down her face. They won't stop, she whispered. Not until I'm erased. Ethan turned toward her, whispering harshly, then we give them something to remember instead. She looked at him, startled by the steel in his voice. You'd risk your life for this. For me. He met her gaze steadily. You helped me remember what it's like to fight for something again. For a moment, the world seemed to still, just the sound of rain, the crack of distant thunder, and two people clinging to a fragile thread of hope. Then a light swept past, dangerously close. They ducked lower. A soldier's voice called out just yards away. Tracks lead this way! Move! Ethan grabbed her hand. This way. They sprinted deeper into the forest, weaving between trees. Claire stumbled, clutching her side where the edge of her jacket was torn and blood darkened the fabric. You're hit? Ethan hissed. It's nothing, she gasped. Keep going. But he stopped anyway, dropping to his knees beside her. It's not nothing. The wound wasn't deep, but it was bleeding freely. He ripped a strip from his flannel sleeve, and wrapped it tight around her waist. She winced but didn't complain. Their eyes met again, and for a heartbeat, the rain seemed to fade away. Why are you doing this? She whispered. Because my daughter deserves to live in a world where people like you aren't hunted for telling the truth, he said. And because my wife, Emily. She used to believe there was good in everyone. You remind me she was right. Claire's lips parted, but before she could speak, a distant crack echoed. A gunshot. Bark exploded from the tree above their heads. Run, she shouted. They bolted again, hearts pounding. The lights behind them grew brighter, closer. Then, just when the chase seemed endless, Claire pointed ahead through the storm. There. A faint outline. An old ranger tower rising from the trees, its beacon long dead but still standing like a ghost from another time. Ethan nodded grimly. If that's your safe place, it better live up to its name. They climbed the slick, rusted ladder as voices echoed below. Lightning illuminated the forest in flashes of white, each one revealing how close their pursuers were. By the time they reached the top, they were breathless and shaking. Claire dropped the duffel onto the floor and fumbled with a small transmitter inside. If I can get a signal out, we might have a chance. Ethan leaned against the railing, scanning the tree line. And if you can't? Claire's fingers stilled. Then we make our last stand right here. Thunder boomed overhead as she began transmitting. And far below, through the blur of rain and darkness, figures were already gathering, moving in for the kill. Shutters of the ranger tower, slamming them against the walls like the heartbeat of the storm itself. Lightning painted the forest below in ghostly flashes. Brief, merciless glimpses of dark figures closing in. Claire hunched over the transmitter, twisting dials, flicking switches. Come on. She muttered under her breath. Come on. The device hissed and crackled, barely catching a signal. Ethan crouched beside her, scanning the tree line through the sheets of rain. Every few seconds, he saw a glint of movement. Reflections off rifle barrels, beams of flashlight sweeping back and forth. They're surrounding us, he said quietly. I know, she replied, her voice tight with concentration. But I need 30 more seconds. Ethan's hands trembled, not from fear, but from adrenaline and exhaustion. His clothes clung to him, soaked and heavy. Every muscle screamed for rest, but his mind wouldn't let him stop. Claire hit another switch. A sharp tone pierced the air. Then, a faint voice broke through the static. Monroe. Is that you? Say again. Her eyes widened. This is Sergeant Claire Monroe, ID 7429. I need extraction. Coordinates incoming. Ranger Tower north of Fairview. Do you copy? Static swallowed the reply. Repeat. Do you copy? A distant crack of thunder drowned out the next sound. The signal was fading again. Ethan stepped closer. "Did they hear you?" "I don't know," she said, breath trembling. "If they did, they'll send someone. If not..." The words hung unfinished. Below them, a voice boomed through a megaphone, calm, cold, deliberate. "Claire Monroe, you are surrounded. Surrender peacefully, and the civilian will not be harmed." Ethan froze. "They know I'm here." Claire's jaw clenched. "They always know." She stood slowly, pulling her pistol from its holster. "Get down. Stay low." But Ethan didn't move. His eyes were on the forest floor, where beams of light converged like the closing jaws of a trap. "You said you had proof," he said, his voice rough. "That what they did was wrong. Is it in that bag?" "Yes," she said. "Everything. Names, dates, footage. Enough to expose them all. Then give it to me." Her head snapped toward him. "What? You said they'll kill you to erase the truth. So let me carry it. If they catch you, it ends. But if they catch me, they won't expect that." She stared at him, rain glistening on her face like tears. "Ethan, you don't understand what you're offering. If they find that drive on you, they'll kill you too." He met her gaze steadily. "Then it's a fair trade. You gave my daughter a chance to live in a world where truth still matters. I'm not letting that die here." But Claire's breath caught, torn between fear and gratitude. Finally, she reached into the duffel, pulled out a small, black hard drive, and pressed it into his palm. "If I don't make it out, find a woman named Captain Morgan Reeves. She's with the press corps in D.C. She'll know what to do with it." Ethan nodded, slipping the drive into the inner pocket of his jacket. "Got it." Below, movement. Shadows spreading out like wolves. Claire raised her weapon, scanning the darkness. "When they breach the stair, I'll draw them off. You head for the North Ridge, it'll take you to the highway." "Not without you," he said. She gave a faint, almost broken smile. "Don't argue with a soldier, Ethan. You'll lose." Then came the first gunshot, sharp, metallic, echoing through the tower. Wood splintered near her shoulder. She ducked, firing back into the darkness. The muzzle flashes lit up her face, fierce, determined, alive. Ethan grabbed an old flare gun from a supply shelf. "You said you needed light." He fired into the sky. The flare burst high above the trees, bathing the forest in a red glow. For a moment, the attackers were visible. 3 men in tactical gear, moving fast. Claire took her shot. One dropped. Another stumbled back, shouting. "Go," she yelled. Ethan hesitated, then turned and climbed out onto the back ladder, the wind slamming against him like an ocean. He looked down. The drop was steep, but survivable. "Claire?" he shouted. "Come on." She fired again, then looked over her shoulder. "I'll be right behind you." But even as she said it, a flash of light and a deafening explosion ripped through the tower. The floor shuddered, and fire erupted from the base. "Claire!" Ethan screamed, gripping the railing as the structure swayed violently. Smoke filled the air, choking and hot. Through the haze, he saw her. Half hidden by firelight, limping, her face streaked with soot. She shoved something heavy against the transmitter, sparking it back to life. "Signal sent," she gasped. "They'll come." Another explosion tore through the lower supports. The tower tilted. Ethan reached down, shouting her name, stretching out his hand through the rain and smoke. "Claire, jump!" She looked up, eyes glistening. Not with fear, but with something deeper. A silent thank you. A goodbye. Then the tower collapsed. The impact threw Ethan backward into the mud, the world spinning in a blur of fire, thunder, and shattered wood. He hit the ground hard, his vision flashing white. When he came to, the rain had doused most of the flames. The tower lay in ruins. He stumbled toward it, shouting her name again and again. No answer. Just the hiss of rain, the smell of smoke, and the distant wail of sirens that didn't belong to any rescue team. Ethan fell to his knees beside the wreckage, his chest heaving. The drive pressed against his ribs, warm from his body heat. Claire's final words echoed in his mind. "They'll come." He didn't know if she was right. He didn't know if anyone would believe him. But he knew one thing, she'd died trying to tell the truth. And he would make sure the world heard it. Through the trees, faint headlights appeared. Vehicles approaching fast. Ethan wiped the blood and rain from his eyes, rose to his feet, and started running toward the ridge. Behind him, the tower burned. A beacon in the storm. Crept over the horizon, a pale gray light seeping through the mist. Ethan stumbled through the underbrush, soaked, bleeding, and exhausted. His lungs burned with every breath, his boots sinking deep into the mud. Behind him, The faint glow of the collapsing Ranger Tower still flickered like a dying star in the distance. He didn't look back again. Every step forward was a promise. To Claire, to Lily, to Emily's memory, that he would finish what had begun in that storm. He pressed one hand against his chest, feeling the small black drive tucked safely inside his jacket. The last trace of Claire Monroe's courage. The forest thinned as he reached the ridge. Below lay the winding highway, shimmering faintly in the rainlight. A single vehicle appeared in the distance, cutting through the fog, an old pickup with a busted headlight. For a terrifying second, Ethan thought it might be them again. The men who hunted her. But as it slowed near the curve, the driver's face came into view. Margaret. His neighbor. Her eyes widened as she saw him emerging from the trees, soaked and staggering. She jumped out of the truck, calling his name. Ethan. My God, what happened? He fell to his knees beside the road, every ounce of strength draining from him. Lily, he gasped. She's fine, Margaret said quickly, crouching beside him. She's safe. She's been asking for you all night. The relief hit him so hard it brought tears to his eyes. For a moment, he couldn't speak. The storm inside him, the fear, the grief, the rage, broke into quiet sobs. Margaret's gaze fell on the bloodstains and torn fabric of his jacket. Ethan, what on earth? He looked up at her, voice rough and hoarse. There's no time. I need to get this to someone who can make it right. He pulled the small drive from his pocket, gripping it as though it were life itself. This is the truth, Margaret. People died for it. She stared at him, bewildered but trusting. Tell me what to do. He hesitated, the image of Claire's face flashing in his mind. Her eyes. The steadiness of her voice when she'd said, "They'll come." He swallowed hard. There's a woman named Captain Morgan Reeves in Washington. Press Corps Liaison. If I don't make it, get this to her. Promise me. Margaret's voice softened. You're not dying on me. Ethan Ward, get in the truck. He managed a faint, wary smile. Yes. Ma'am. She helped him into the passenger seat, and started the engine. The truck rumbled to life, its wipers struggling against the drizzle, as they pulled onto the road. As they drove, the radio crackled faintly with early morning news. Most of it was static, until a clear voice cut through. An explosion reported near the Fairview National Forest early this morning. Authorities have yet to comment, but sources claim military personnel were seen in the area. Ethan closed his eyes, his fists tightening. They were already covering it up. He reached into his pocket, running his thumb over the drive. Claire's voice echoed in his mind. If I don't make it, make sure someone does. He turned to Margaret. Take me to Lily first. I need to see her. 20 minutes later, they pulled into the small farmhouse where Margaret had taken shelter during the storm. Lily ran out the moment she saw the truck, her tiny boots splashing through puddles. Daddy. Ethan barely got the door open before she was in his arms. He lifted her up, holding her close, burying his face in her wet hair. You're safe, he whispered over and over. You're safe, sweetheart. She looked up at him with wide eyes. You came back. He smiled through the ache in his chest. Always. Inside, he washed the blood from his hands, bandaged what he could. Margaret brewed coffee, watching him with a worried expression. You should go to the police, she said quietly. Ethan shook his head. They're part of it. Not all of them, but enough. If I walk in with this drive, it disappears before the truth ever sees daylight. Then what will you do? He stared out the window at the morning mist. The same thing she did. I'll keep running until someone listens. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the soft hum of the kettle and the rain easing into silence. Then Margaret said, You know you can't do this alone. Ethan smiled faintly. I won't be. I have her with me. He touched his jacket where the drive rested, and where Claire's memory lived. Days passed. The story on the news twisted and faded. A training accident. Or communications error. No civilian involvement. But Ethan knew the truth. He and Lily left Fairview behind. Their truck loaded with the essentials. Every mile they drove carried them farther from the storm. And closer to something bigger. Each night, he stopped just long enough for Lily to sleep, then sat by the roadside, laptop open, searching for a way to reach Captain Reeves. Finally, after a week of dead ends and encrypted messages, an email arrived. It contained only one line. Tour, bring the truth home, and a location. Washington, D.C. Ethan felt his pulse quicken. It was time. He looked over at Lily sleeping in the back seat, her little hand clutching the stuffed bear Claire had found for her in the truck's glove box. For a moment, he could almost hear Claire's voice in the rain again. Soft, resolute. "You're stronger than you think, Ethan," he whispered into the quiet car. "I'll finish what you started." The road stretched out before him, long and uncertain, but for the first time in years, he felt purpose. Not just survival, not just grief. When dawn broke over the horizon, it lit the wet highway in gold. The storm had finally passed. Ethan pressed the gas. The sound of the engine rising like a heartbeat. Somewhere far behind him, in a world that would never know her name, the story of Claire Munro ended. But on that endless road ahead, her truth lived on. In the hands of a single father who refused to let her sacrifice vanish into silence.